Hello everyone, welcome to the computer-aided drawing course. In this video, we're gonna discuss three things. We're gonna discuss the properties, how we can change the properties of an object, especially object that would be used for creating two-dimensional sketches like lines, circles, points, how we can change their colors, the thickness of a line, and how we can change the type of the line. This is in the first part of the video. In the second part, we're gonna discuss the dimensioning, how we can add dimensions to objects or two-dimensional, especially two-dimensional sketches. Then at the last part of the video, I'm gonna show you how we can work using layers on AutoCAD. So these are the main three topics, which are again the properties of objects, two-dimensional objects especially, and the dimensioning in addition to layers, how we can, or layering, how we can do these things using AutoCAD. So as we discussed, starting with the first part, which is the properties, as we discussed in the start of this course, that we said that it is highly important to achieve some contrast in the different objects that we are using, or the different types of lines. In terms, we discuss different types of lines. We said that we do have a visible line, we do have dashed line that represent any hidden edges in an object. We discussed the center line, the chain line. We discussed the even the line that would be used for adding dimensions. We said that we have to achieve some contrast in the thickness between these different types of lines, so we can distinguish between, for example, the line that would be used for the dimension, or the line that would be used as a part represent an edge, a visible edge in the object. Also the line that would be used in the representing the hidden edge in an object. So basically we do have different types of the lines. As we said, we do have the visible solid line, we do have the dash line, we do have the center line. These are the main three types of line that would be used, but the continuous visible line, also that the continuous line that would be used here is the dimensioning. Like if I give you an example of a drawing, one of the exercises that we consider to see these different forms and different types of lines. Like for example, if we consider this drawing, as you can see, we have lots of different types of lines here. We have the line, this line, which is the line for the dimensioning, the dimension, this one, this is known as the dimension line. As you can see, it is a solid line, continuous line. Also, we do have this broken line, which is known as the dash line, as we discussed. And as you can see, there is also another type of line, which is this continuous line that represents the edges of an object, which it should be this three-dimensional object. So this is what we're going to discuss later. These are the projections, and this is the three-dimensional representation of these projections. But forget about these details of the drawing. I'm just talking about the contrast in the different types, in the type, the thickness of the line. We do have some visible line that represent a real visible object edge in the object, like this line, these boundary lines. In addition to this dash line represent something hidden, a specific feature in the object, but it is not seen from this projection or this view. So that's why it is known as hidden line or dash line. It is commonly known as a dash line. So we have to represent this one as a dash line, and according to the standard, as you can see, the dash line, it should be thinner than the visible continuous line. Also, if you can see, this is also a continuous line, which is the dimension line, but the line for dimensioning, which are already continuous line, they should also be thinner than the visible line. So that's why, if you remember, we said that we have to use different pencils with different sizes through the class, especially for hand drawing, and we agreed that we're gonna have only two pencils with two different sizes, like 0.7 and 0.5, and we said that these two sizes are enough to achieve some contrast between these different types of the lines. So this is what we're gonna go over here in AutoCAD. What we practiced so far on AutoCAD, we didn't discuss how we can change the thickness of the line, how we can change the type of the line from solid line or continuous line to dash line or center line. This is what we're gonna discuss right now. All right, so let us consider this two-dimensional sketch and let's see how we can do changes to the properties of these different lines and curves, or in other words, how we can achieve some contrast in the thickness in addition to the line type, the thickness of the line or the line type. And we said that if we are talking here about line type, it means that I'm talking about like this curve. This curve itself, it is a line, but it is a curved line, right? So for example, to do all of these things, you're gonna find here in the main panel, you're gonna find this panel for the properties. All the properties that we can do to these lines, we can use this panel. Or the other option is to double click. If we double click over any one of these objects, because we do have lots of objects, like this one is an object, this one is an object, this line, this circle is an object, so many objects. So to find like a short list of the properties of this object, you can double click on it. So you're gonna find something here. And in this properties, it is kind of including some items, but you can add to this list more items as I'm gonna show you. But anyway, to change, the other option is just directly to select the object, then you're gonna go to change the properties of these objects from this panel here. The main three things basically that we have to do changes for are the thickness in addition to the type of the line. The thickness, it can be using this second, the list in the middle. As you can see, the thickness, it is by layer. By layer, this is the default that depends on the setup and the settings of the AutoCAD. And this is what you already, as you can see, this is the thickness as already seen here for just thin line. Also, there are, but if you would like to get rid or override the value of the default value of the thickness of the line, you can use any thickness. As you can see, there are lots of thicknesses of the line, up to 2.11 millimeter. Even you can add more settings. You can add more thicknesses or more thicker lines if you wish. But basically, as we discussed, if we do have visible continuous line, and the visible continuous line, we said that it is better to have like between 0.7 millimeter up to 1 millimeter. So for example, if I need this edge, these edges, these external edges as thick visible lines or visible edges of the object, so simply you can go to this second list, but you have to choose the objects first. You have to choose all of them. Then you're gonna go directly and change the thickness to 0.7 or 1 millimeter. It's up to you. Let us choose, for example, 0.7 millimeter. This is gonna be the thickness. So now there is a thickness that has been assigned to all of these objects, to this line, this curve, this line, and this curve, and so on. And the other, they are still thin according to the default value, according to the bilayer. So again, to change the thickness of any line, you have to change the object or the line first. Then you're gonna go to the second list and pick the thickness, right? But how about, there is two things here that I'd like to mention. The first thing, that I don't see any contrast. As you can see, there is no any contrast, there is no changes. Even if you try to give it like a very thick 2.11 millimeter thickness, I don't see any changes to the line, right? I'm still having the same thickness. Why? Because we didn't activate, or we didn't ask AutoCAD to give us a contrast in the thicknesses. To activate this, so now I assign 0.7 millimeter to these lines, but I'm still seeing them with the same thickness like any other lines, right? So to show the contrast, if you would like to see the contrast over AutoCAD, over this screen, you can activate this icon, which is known as show or hide line weight. Here we would like to show the contrast in the line weights or the line thickness that we assign. So if you press on this icon, you're gonna see that these edges are already thicker than the other ones. Make sense? So, but if you switch it off, you're gonna end up with this default thing. But you should understand that this line has been assigned a thickness of 0.7 millimeter. When we try to blend this line, if we try to blend the shape, it will be seen that these lines, these edges will be thicker than the other edges. This is what we be seeing basically seen in the printing. But here in the preview, this is how we see, since you are not activating this one, just gonna see all the line with the same thickness, which is by default or by layer. But if you would like to see the lines with different contrast in terms of the thickness, which is known according to AutoCAD as line weight, this is the line weight list, simply you can activate this one. If this icon is not included in the list, you can go directly to the customization on the right and make sure that the line weight icon already checked in. You're gonna find line weight. This one is already checked in. If it is not checked, check this one. You're gonna directly see the icon will be shown here. Then you can see the contrast, activate or switch it on or switch it off. It's up to you, right? But again, this line has been assigned a thickness of 0.7, and if we try at any instant we select this line, you're gonna see the thickness already up there. But for example, like this one, we didn't assign anything, so it is the default thing. It is the by layer default value of the AutoCAD that already set up in the settings, right? So this is another thing. This is one of the things, is how to see the contrast in the line. And simply again, how it works, your objective is just to select the object, then you're gonna go directly to change the line, the thickness. How about if for some reason you forgot to select the object and you did change the thickness? Let's say, for example, I changed the thickness here into 0.7, but I didn't select an object, right? So in this case, if you try to draw any line, any other line, any new line, it will be seen thick. Why? This new line that I created here, they took the thickness that I just assigned, because simply you made the 0.7 as a default. For any new line, new circle that you try to draw, it will be seen thick. Right? It will be the 0.7 will be assigned to these new lines automatically. But that's why it is important, if you are interested in changing the size of specific objects, so your objective to select the object first, then go ahead and change the size, right? And it is advised to keep this layer, this default value as it is. Like we create the drawing in the beginning with by layer, then we can go ahead and do changes to the different line that should be thicker or different format, right? So this is in terms of the thickness, how we can change the thickness of the line. This is very simple. Select the object again and change the thickness. Another thing that we can do changes into the properties are the type of the line. We discussed that we do have dash line, we do have center lines, we do have continuous lines. All of these are continuous lines. But how about if we do have the line in the middle here, that it should be dash line? So in this case, we have to select again the object. You have to select the object and you're gonna move here to this list, which is the line type. This list includes some types, which as you can see, all of them are continuous lines, but you can add to this list. How? You have to press on other. You're gonna find a window. This window will show up and your objective is just to load to this list. By default, AutoCAD shows only 3 types of lines, which are the by layer, by look, and continuous, by plug, and continuous. All of these lines are continuous solid lines. This is the default thing in AutoCAD. But if you can add any other type of the line to this list by pressing on load, you're gonna find very long list of different types of lines. There are lots of types of lines. The thing that we need basically is ISO dash, because ISO stands for the international system. This is the international system that used in many of the European and Middle East countries in terms of the standard in engineering drawing. So this is the dash line according to the standard. But we have different forms and different types of the dash line basically, but this is the thing that we have to use as ISO dash, which is this one. So I need this one because probably we would like or we would need to draw dash lines. So in this case, we have to add this icon or this one to the list. So once you press OK, it will be included into the list automatically. Then you can add more, because one of the types of lines that we have to add is the center line. So if you scroll down here, you're gonna find center, right? There is center and there are lots of other things in addition to center, like center 0.5x, center to x, double x, and so on. So this is like scaling 0.5x, double x. This is like scaling up or down. Don't scale to the center line. It means that just big center, which stands for the center line. And if you remember that we said that the center line, it is a big dash and a small dash, as already seen here in the preview. And then just press OK. So you're gonna find that it has been included into the list. So if you would like to add any more other types of lines as you wish, you can add to the list. But these are the two types of line that we basically need, or we basically use as mechanical engineer. And this is what we discussed in the first meeting or the first lecture, that we discussed different types of lines. We said that we do have continuous line, we do have dash line in addition to the center line. These are the three types of line that we need through this course, or basically as mechanical engineer. Once you add the list, the different types of lines to the list, you can press OK. So they had been included into the list. So how about if I need this line in the middle as a dash line? So your objective is just to go select, again, you have to select the object first. Then you're gonna go to the list and choose here AutoCAD or ACAD ISO dash line, which is this one. If once you press on this one, it has been converted into dash line, into dashes. So this is as a dash line here, right? But if you forgot to select the object, like and you did change into dash line, as I did here, and you try to draw a line, so the line is gonna take the new type that you already assigned as a default, right? But if you would like, that's why it is advised to select the object first. Keep all these by default, by layer, as the default values, and finish the drawing. At the end, you can go ahead and do changes to the line thick, to the line type, and so on. How about, for example, for some reason, if I'd like to draw the center line, any circle, as we discussed before, it should have two center lines, right? So I'm gonna draw one center line here for this circle, and I'm gonna draw another horizontal line in this way, and there is a vertical line, horizontal line, and this line should be center lines, right? Then, so initially I'm drawing them like continuous lines, like any other line. Then I'm gonna convert their properties into center line, as I'm gonna show you. So simply, these are the different types of lines here. So all of these center lines, they are not physically center, but they are solid line, continuous lines. Now I need to convert them into center lines. So your objective is just to select them. You can select all of them at once. Then you're gonna do changes to their type into center line. So you're gonna choose center here. So now they had been assigned, all of these lines had been assigned to be center line. But if we try to zoom in, I don't see any center line. It is still solid line. Why? Because you have to work on the scale. Also, as you can see here in this dash line, the dash is too big. We said that, if you remember, that the dash side, it should be consistent with the drawing. Like here we are using the dash size that is too much big. So here we would like to play somehow with the scaling up or scaling down the size of the dashes, or decreasing. We would like to decrease the size of the dash. Also here we would like to play with the scale of the center line, because I don't see it as a center line. So to do so, basically, you have to double click into the object. If you double click into the object, as we said, that you're gonna find a list of the sum of the property that has been assigned. So this line, it has been assigned as a line type, as a dash line, but the line type scale, it is already 1. So I need to scale it down. I need to decrease the size of the dash. So how about if I make it 0.5? This is the scale. If we change the scale into 0.5, as you can see, the size of the dash has been decreased. If you would like to decrease more, you can decrease into quarter. So the dash size has been decreased more, and so on. So your objective is just to play with the scale that make the size of the dash is consistent with the size of the overall drawing that you already generating. So simply, for example, like 0.4 or 0.5 is quite good as a size for this dash line. But remember that this 0.5, it is not with all the drawing. If you have a bigger drawing, you probably need to scale it up. Like, for example, here for this one, I'm gonna do the same for the center lines. If you just press here, select all of these objects and just double click over anyone, So as you can see, we do have different types of the lines. So I'm gonna make all of them center lines. Then I'm gonna choose the scale, for example, of all of them like 0.5. So if I decrease the scale, as you can see, I'm seeing them as center lines. Initially, the scale by default it is 1. The scale of the line it is 1. So as 1, it means that they are big to be seen as center lines within this small circle. So I have to scale it down. If you try the 0.5, it's gonna be clearly seen here as center lines. So as you can see, I have drawn center lines to these circles in addition to dash line. I forgot this one, I choose this one. So double click over this one to be dash line. I need it as a dash line. And we said that the scale is 0.4 is quite good for this line. So as you can see, we do have different types. We do have the continuous line, we do have the dash line, the center line. This basically the different types of line that we have to use in terms of engineering drawing. How about if you would like to change the weight of these 4 circles? You can select them, then you're gonna go to the weight and pick the weight here to be 0.7, or simply you can double click over any one of them and you're gonna find into the, you probably gonna find in this list the line weight. But as you can see, I don't see any line weight into this list, right? How about if you would like to add it to the list? To add any item to this list, your objective is just to press on this customize icon. If you press on this one, you're gonna there is a window that is gonna show up, and there are lots of things that you can add to this list. One of the things, for example, I can add to the list is the line type scale. If you would like to scale it up or scale it down, also the line weight, right? Because they are already not checked here. So check the thing that you would like to add to this list. So for example, we need the line type. Line type, it means that is it dash line or center line or continuous line. Also, we need the line weight, how much of the weight or the thickness of the line itself. I checked on these 2 and I added them to the list. So now if you double click over the circle, again, if you just choose these circles and then double click over anyone, you're gonna find that line type has been included in addition to the line weight. So I'm gonna make this line weight, for example, 0.7, like the solid, because they should be like solid edges, right? So also, how about if you would like to change the line weight of these lines, the dash line in addition to the center line? For example, let us make the line weight of the dash line, double click on it, and you're gonna find here the line weight. Again, if it is not included, you're gonna customize and add it to the list. The line width here, it is, let us use 0.4, for example, or 0.5 or 0.4 for the dash line. And the center line, we're gonna make it thinner. Like, let's say you can choose the center lines and you can double click over any one of these lines and change the line weight into, let's say, 0.25. All right. So this contrast, so I have achieved different contrasts here. Like I achieved contrast in terms of the thickness, in terms of the shape or the type of the line. This contrast will be clearly seen and it will be printed if we try to print this drawing. Even if I try to print this one as a PDF, and we're gonna discuss this thing later as I'm gonna show you. Here I'm just gonna choose the PDF format and window. I'm gonna explain these things to you in another video. But for now, I just want to show you how it's gonna look like when we try to print it as a PDF. So it's gonna be seen, yes, here. All right. So as you can see, I have achieved a contrast between, as you can see a little bit, that these edges are a little bit thicker, 0.7 millimeter, and the dash line is already 0.4 millimeter. And the thickness of this edge is very similar to the thickness of the circle, but the center line is thinner than it. So we have achieved some contrast in the thickness in addition to the type, and this is how we can change the properties of the objects using AutoCAD, and this is very important. So how it works, my advice to you is to generate the drawing, finish all the drawing first using by layer. Don't do any changes to this list, and finish all the drawing. Even don't activate, I dislike activating this thickness. And once you even the dash line, if there is a dash line that should be drawn as a dash line in the beginning, draw it as a continuous line, as I did for the center lines. Draw any line as a continuous line and finish all the drawing. Then once you finish, you're gonna pick the object and change its properties. Whatever, using this list or by double clicking on it, so you're gonna change the size, the line type, the scale, anything. Again, if there is one of these items is not included into the list, you're gonna press on this icon here, the customize icon, and you can check in any one of these items. Make sense? So this is simply how we can change the properties of an object in terms of the line thickness in addition to the line type. But there is another feature of AutoCAD that basically we don't have this thing if we try to draw by hand. When we draw by hand, basically we are using just the pencil, and the pencil we can achieve contrast in terms of the line type and the line thickness. But how about if we would like to achieve some contrast in terms of the color as well? Can we change the color type, the color of any object? Yes, we can. This is an extra option that already can be achieved using AutoCAD. There is, and this is the first list here. If you select any object like these curves, I can choose, for example, these circles here, and I can assign a different color to them. But as you can see, by default, they are by layer. What does it mean by layer? By layer, it means that the color assigned to these circles, it will be the highest contrast with the background that you see. The background here of AutoCAD is black. So the highest contrast is going to be white. It means that if the background is black, so this circle will be seen as white. So you can see it, right? But for some reason, there is an option. We can play with the settings in the settings of AutoCAD to change this black background to be white, for example. Like, for example, like this case. If you move to the layout, let us remove, no, up. If you move to the layout background is white. So as you can see, the edges has been seen. Even you can check into this weight, so you can see the contrast in the weight as well. Or you can turn it off or on in this way. So as you can see, these edges has been converted, their colors has been converted into black. Why? Because the background is already white, so you can see the contrast. So by layer, it means that AutoCAD changes the color of the line depending on the background. If the background is black, as this case, so the by layer, the color of all of these objects will be automatically white. But if the background is white, it will be automatically black. Make sense? But if you would like to get rid of this or override this color value, you can pick the object. You can choose any object and change its color. It's up to you. I can select all of these objects, these circles, for example, and I'm gonna assign to them a color like red, for example. So red, it means that you're already overwriting the default thing. Red, these circles all the time will be seen red. Whatever is the background. If the background is black, they will be seen red. If the background is white, they will be seen red. Even if the background is red, they will be seen red. So in this case, you won't gonna see the circles. You got my point? So if you override the color, the default by layer color type, it means that you already assigned a specific color to this object, and this specific color will be assigned all the time, no matter what is the background of this of the drawing sheet. Like, for example, if you switch to this background, you're gonna see the circles are red. And if you try to print this one and you have a color printer, you're gonna see these circles in the printer will be seen red. Make sense? So, but the other ones, the other line that you didn't overwrite their colors, they will be seen white or black depending on the background. Make sense? So this is also one of the things. I can change the color of this dash line, for example, into blue, so we're gonna have different contrast. Basically, we need this contrast in terms of the coloring things in case that we do have complicated shapes and there are lots of lines, so you would like to distinguish between them, as I'm gonna show you, especially when we add the dimensions. Make sense? So this is simply how we can change the properties of of an object in terms of the color, in terms of the line type, and the line weight. Now let us move to the second part of this video, which is the dimensioning. How we can add dimensions to a specific drawing like the one that we generated here. Adding the dimension, it should be following a specific standard. Since we are sticking or using the ISO or following the ISO standard for engineering drawing, so we have to add or stick to this standard for adding the dimension. Dimensioning, it is important. It is highly important actually, because we won't gonna able to regenerate this drawing again without any dimensions. If you just if you created the drawing and there is no dimensioning, nobody can able to regenerate this drawing or even to work over this drawing further because of the missing dimension. And you had that feeling actually when I intentionally give you some exercises in the homeworks and even in the in-class exercises, and there was some missing dimensions. I forgot these dimensions intentionally somehow to give you the sense how important is the dimensioning, because if there is a missing dimension, you won't gonna able to proceed further, right? So adding all the dimensions and defining all, adding all the dimensions to all the objects, and don't forget any and don't forget any dimension. It is highly important, basically for complete define of engineering drawing. So somebody else, as I said, would be able to use this drawing or work over further over this drawing. So adding the dimension is highly important to know how we can add these dimensions, whatever using AutoCAD or by hand following the standard. And the standard tab that we're gonna use again, it is ISO, as I'm gonna show you. Also, it is highly important to not forget or miss any dimension. Missing dimensions, it is expected in the beginning since you're already just learning, but with experience, as you practice more, and this depends on your experience, you would be able with time to add all the dimension without missing anyone, right? And this is what we're gonna practice doing over through this course. So how we can add dimensions using AutoCAD? It is very simple actually, and the standard things will be automatically applied using AutoCAD. This is gonna be through the annotation panel, this one. This panel, we're gonna use it for adding the dimension, for adding any note or anything. In some cases, we probably need to add some text here, type something, write something to the engineer who's gonna work over this drawing, like a note or whatever. So adding text, adding dimensions, this is what we're gonna discuss now. So in the old versions, the early versions of AutoCAD, this was the main list of adding dimensions in AutoCAD. This icon, it was not there. This icon had been included in the new versions of AutoCAD, but in the earlier versions, basically this icon or this command was not included. This is like smart dimensioning. They had this one from SolidWorks. SolidWorks already have this small dimensioning tool. So they added or included a similar one, especially, and it is very helpful in adding the dimension. And this is what you're gonna do or use all the time for adding dimension to the drawing. But let me go over the default things, the earlier versions, how we used to add dimensions over using AutoCAD, using these different commands. So for example, the first icon here, it gives us the ability to define the dimension of a linear dimension. Linear dimension, it means that if you press on this one, AutoCAD is gonna ask us to specify first extension line origin and or select default. Forget about the default value or select object. We can directly select extension line. For example, I can select from this line to this line. Like I'm interested in finding the distance between these two lines and adding a dimension between these 2 points. So as you can see, I have clicked on this point, I clicked on this point, then I end up with a dimension here. So the dimension will be automatically added. And the value right now, it is 99.99, or it should be, for example, if I repeated it, I should get 100, because this dimension, it should be 100 millimeters. So if I choose a point over this line and another point over the other line, I'm gonna get 100. And this is physically what already happened, or what I already have here, like this distance between these two lines. This distance is already 100 as I already drew this thing. So the dimension, this dimension, it will be automatically shown. This dimension will be shown depending on the dimensions, the exact dimension that you already generated this drawing. Like for example, I drew the distance between this line and this line, it was 100, so I'm getting also 100. Also, if you would like to have the dimension between any 2 points, like the distance between the center point of this circle and this center point is already 60, and so on. So this is linear. Linear, simply your objective is just to pick 2 points. This is an option. Or another option is using the linear also, that you can select objects. And instead of just selecting points, you can select objects. Like for example, you can choose this option here, which is select object by pressing space or enter, and you can select the object, like the distance between this object. Then you have to select the other, or it's gonna give us the length of this object automatically, right? So if you choose linear, so as you can see, the cursor is two intersecting lines. It means that AutoCAD asks us to specify a point. How about if you don't specify, if you don't want to specify a point, and instead I want to find the length of a line, a linear line. So in this case, you have to press space. So you're gonna see that the cursor has been converted into a small box. Then you can select the line. Once you choose this line here, this way, you can automatically end up with the length of this line. Make sense? So this is one of the things, or one of the two that would be used. But there is an important notice here, or something that you should observe. If we choose the line as we did here for the 100, we pick the point here and we choose another point here. So as you can see, something that you should understand about this dimension line, that this line, this arrow itself is known as the dimension line. And this line here, this one, this line that connects this point to this point, this horizontal line is known as the extension line of the dimension. So the dimension line, it is two parts. It is the dimension line itself, which is the arrow itself, in addition to the extension line. Based on the standard of engineering drawing, it is not acceptable to have the extension line intersecting with the object. So again, according to the standard, the extension line, it should not be intersecting with the object. What is the object? Which is the shape. This is, if you choose the color, for example here, I just activated this one to see the contrast in the thickness. So as you can see, this thin line, this is the extension line of this dimension line, but it do intersect with the object, with the drawing itself, right? This is not acceptable according to the standard, according to the ISO standard. According to the standard, this dimension line, this point, it should be somehow at a certain space away from the drawing. So you aren't gonna mix it up with the drawing. You got my point? The same thing here. This is the other end of the dimension line. I'm gonna move it here up to this point. The same thing for this dimension line. I'm gonna move it down here. Also, this one, it should be moved down up to this point, for example, here. In this way. And they should be consistent. I mean, like, they should be coincident together. So now, this is acceptable. This is according to the standard that don't have the dimension line or the extension line intersecting with the object itself. Right? But if you did it, nobody gonna ask you why you are doing, and even AutoCAD gonna work perfectly, and you won't gonna find any error, right? And many of the engineers, they don't give care to these standard things. It means that, but according to the standard, as I said, it is not advised to have the extension line intersecting with the object. Like it should be represented as I am representing here. Also for the 60, for example, it is not also acceptable according to the standard to have the extension line inside the object. It is already moving from the center point to the center point, yes, but we have to move this point down, and we have to move this point down in this way. Make sense? So this is acceptable according to the ISO, and or this is according, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to stick to the ISO, to the standard of the adding dimension according to the ISO. I can move this one even back. You can just select this small box and you can move the dimension back. Also, I can move this back a little bit. Even the space between the dimension line to the first line of the object, it has a standard value, right? But basically to stick to the standard value all the time, it's gonna be hard, but it should be consistent. So what does it mean? For example, it doesn't make sense to have this line is already up there. This is not good. This doesn't make sense. But it makes sense if you have the 100 is here. Also, the distance between two dimensions, it should be consistent. They shouldn't be very close to each other, like this one. Or also they shouldn't be very far from each other, like this one. So they should be like 10 millimeter, for example, space. And also this basically depends mainly on the size of the dimension itself. So this distance is a good distance between the dimension and the object, and between two different dimensions. Like this one, the dimension here, it is very close to the shape. So it is advised to move this 100 a little bit down, and move this 60 somehow down here. So now it makes sense. So one of the standard things that the extension line shouldn't intersect with the object. Also, there should be at least some space between the extension line and the object itself. Like this one, as you can see, the extension line is already coming directly. There is a small distance here. This is according to the standard of ISO, but even this standard, it won't gonna be clearly seen, because in this view, to me, this extension line is already intersecting with the baseline or the object line, right? But here, there should be some space between the baseline or the object line and the extension line, as already here. But the space is too small, so you can move it back even. I can move this point back somehow and move this point somehow, so it can be clearly seen. Make sense? Also, the same thing for this dimension. I can move it back, I can move this back, this point back, the extension line in this way. But as you can see, this distance is too much, it is too big, so it is not advised it is advised, for example, for this 60 to move it forward somehow, and not that much like this one, and this point it would be somewhere here, and this point is somewhere here, right? Like this one can be extended up here. So now these dimensions are making sense or very acceptable in terms of the standard according to the ISO. But all of these dimensions, as you can see, they are linear dimension. And this is the first icon here, how we can add linear dimension. The same thing is very similar to the aligned. And instead of having linear, it can give us horizontal or vertical dimension. But in case that you have inclined dimension, that like aligned dimension, like the distance between this center to this center over the diagonal, this diagonal distance. So we can pick these 2 points and we define a dimension in this way, right? But as you can see, this aligned dimension, generally it is not preferred in terms of engineering drawing. It is not preferred to add inclined line. For example, if you remember when we discussed that, for example, if we do have a line that is inclined like this one, it is not advised to add dimension to the inclined line itself. It is preferred to add the dimension, for example, to this line here. This way, this horizontal distance, then I'm gonna add the vertical distance, right? This is what we used to define for the dimensioning, right? Before, I draw a line. Should be dimension between these 2 points, right? So we used to define or add the dimensions for any inclined line as horizontal dimension and vertical dimension. The other option is just replace these two with an inclined line by giving the length of this inclined line. You're gonna define the lengths, but in this way. So if you try to use linear, the linear is gonna give us between these 2 points, is gonna give us either horizontal, vertical, or horizontal, as you can move. You're just gonna pick the 2 points and move vertical, so you're gonna see it vertical or you're gonna see it horizontal, right? Or the other option, you can choose the align if you are interested in the length of this line. So it's gonna give us the length of the line and you can move it up somehow. In addition, you have to define an angle, which is gonna be angular, just to give us the angle between these two lines. So you're gonna pick these two lines and then you can define the angle in between the two lines, or you're gonna have the other angle, which is the 180, or this angle or this angle. Which angle that you're already interested, you're just gonna click on any side. So this is simply one of the ways of identifying the dimension of inclined line as a length and angle, but this is not preferred in terms of engineering drawing. What is preferred is just to specify two dimensions, one horizontal and one vertical, using linear, as I did here, right? So, but generally, inclined, it would be needed for some cases, like if you're already interested in the space or the distance over the diagonal. So in this case, we're gonna use the unlined icon or command to give the distance. Also angular, as I explained here, this is this angular to define the angle between any two objects or any two lines, like this one. Even you can define the angle here, which is this one. Make sense? Also, one of the icons here is the arc length. This is not practical thing. For example, if you are interested in finding the perimeter of this quarter of the circle, so automatically you're gonna choose arc icon and you're just gonna pick the arc. So you're gonna end up with the length of this arc. Like you already, AutoCAD gonna do automatic calculation for the diameter, depending on the radius of this arc or the diameter of this arc. AutoCAD gonna do some calculations to end up with the length or the perimeter of this arc in this way. And again, make sure that you do have the extension lines not intersecting with the object, as I did here. Okay, this is also one of the icons or the commands. Radius and diameter, they are very important. For any circle or an arc, you should specify a radius or diameter, right? And many of people think that the diameter and the radius, I mean, they are both acceptable to represent the object, but it is according to the standard of engineering drawing. According to the standard of engineering drawing, if there is a sector of a circle, it should be represented as a radius. Like you define the dimension of this sector as a radius. Whatever it is, quarter of a circle or half a circle or 3/4 of a circle or just a sector of a circle, it means that in case that you do have incomplete circle, it is preferred to define the dimension of this incomplete circle using radius, not a diameter. But in case that you do have a complete circle like these four circles, it is preferred to define their dimension as a diameter. So again, in case that you do have a complete circle, it is preferred according to the standard, the ISO standard. According to the standard, it is preferred for a complete circle to define its dimension using diameter, as a diameter. But in case that you do have incomplete circle, like a portion of a circle, sector of a circle, quarter of a circle, half a circle, define its dimension using radius. So for example, like this curve, the arc, it is not advised. It is not advised to define the diameter of this curve or the dimension of this curve as a length. It is not practical. So, but it makes sense to define the radius of this curve. So you're gonna choose if you choose radius, you're just gonna pick the arc and automatically you're gonna see the radius will be shown here. I already drew this curve with a radius of 20, right? So you're gonna see the radius and you can put it and even you can move it. You can put it outside the drawing or you can define this radius inside the drawing, as I've did here, right? But since we are talking here about inside or outside the drawing, generally speaking, it is not preferred unless we have to. It is not preferred to add dimensions inside the drawing. All the dimensions should be represented outside the drawing. What does it mean? It means that this 20 in this way, it is not preferred unless we have to. If there is no room outside except inside the shape, so in this case, we have to put it inside this case, that is fine. It is acceptable, but not preferred. So try to add all the dimensions outside the shape, not intersecting with the object itself, as we did here. Like this extension line, they should have some space. In addition, this 20, it should be represented, it is preferred to be represented outside the shape, not inside the shape. Make sense? Like for example, this R. So if I decided to define the radius of this curve, so it should be R in this way, and so on. Okay, like for example, this dimension is not acceptable at all according to the standard. Why? It is because it is already inside the shape, but if we don't have any room outside the shape, so in this case, we can add any dimension inside the object itself or inside the shape. But again, it should be preferred outside. And anyway, it is not preferred at all to have any inclined or aligned dimension. Try to minimize the use of aligned dimensions as much as you can, as we discussed before. Okay, what else? So as I said, this arc is not practical. So to define the radius, for example, you're gonna define here R20, and I'm gonna define the R20 for this arc, and R20 for the other arc, which is this one. Make sense? So as you can see, I'm trying to squeeze this one in the middle, like make it exactly in the middle somehow. Okay, so this is the radius, and it is acceptable, and this is according, or basically according to the standard, in case that you do have incomplete circle, because this arc is not a complete circle, it is preferred to define its dimension using a radius. But for the circle, for this circle, I can define its dimension as a radius. Yes, the radius equals 10, but it is not preferred for the circle. For the circle, it is preferred to define its dimension using a diameter. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use diameter for the circle, and then you can define the diameter of the circle in this way. As you can see, there are two R's, and there is phi. This symbol phi indicates that this is a diameter, but R stands for radius of the arc or the curve. So for any complete circle, it is preferred to define its diameter as a diameter. And again, it is preferred to have the dimension outside the drawing, not inside the drawing, as much as you can. But if the space, for example, if we do have a circle, let us add a circle here at the center, like this one, and you would like to define the diameter of this circle. Let me just use the circle of a radius, let's say 15. In the middle. So I'm gonna define a diameter of this circle, and I'm going to try to add the dimension outside the shape, right? In this case, it is not preferred. Why? Because the space that between outside the shape and the object or the feature, which is the circle itself, it is too big, it is too much. This is too much distance. So I have to, for this one, I have to add the dimension inside the shape. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add try to squeeze the diameter inside the circle itself, as already given here, and I'm gonna use phi to define or to recall the diameter. So as I said, if you try or do your best to add the dimension outside the object, but there are some specific dimensions that we have to add them inside the object, like the case of a circle in the center here. If we try to move this one outside, it's gonna be, it doesn't make sense. It means that you're gonna have the dimension line already moving inside the shape, and it's gonna confuse somebody who is really reading the drawing. So for this dimension, it is preferred to have it inside the drawing as already represented here. Make sense? Another object or thing basically is that you should understand, or there are some other things, but anyway, these are the lists or the icons or the command that we used to use for defining dimensions, adding the dimensions to the drawing. This smart tool, it can do all of these functions using only one tool, which is this smart dimensioning, right? So as I said, if you are interested in line or aligned or angular, your objective is just to go to the icon and choose the type of dimension that you would like to add. But this smart dimension, it can do all of these icons, all of these functions using only one command, which is this dimension, smart dimension. So for example, I can remove some dimensions here, like these ones, and I can simply define the distance between this point and this point to be the 60. even, and it's gonna continue, it's gonna be multiple, you're gonna use it multiple times. But if you try to use a linear, for example, you're gonna use it only once and it's gonna be ended and you have to recall again linear. So it is not preferred. Since we have this smart tool, this is the tool that you're gonna use all the time, and you can do everything, all the things that we did within this list, we can do it using this dimensioning. For example, if we are interested in the radius of this curve, once you just come close to the curve, you're gonna see this small box will be shown, then you're gonna click on it, you're gonna end up with the radius. The same tool, it can be used for specifying the radius and linear. And even if you are interested in the distance between this point and this point, so it can give us also aligned dimensions. So all the dimensions, all of this list can be done using only one tool, and it's gonna be multiple. You can use it multiple times. Like for example, if we are interested in the angle between this line, so your objective is just to go over the line without clicking it anything, big the line and move over the other line and big the line, you're gonna end up with the angle. And you're gonna keep, so it will be continue, and you can use this dimensioning tool multiple times, and this is what we basically gonna use for the adding the dimension to the drawing. Make sense? So this is generally how we add the dimension, and again, this is the icon that we're gonna use all the time. All right, so there is another thing that I'd like to mention here, or two things. First of all, when you try to add the dimensions, try to add the dimensions so they would be the guy who's gonna read the drawing, or they would be read in such a way that the text of the dimension, the text I'm talking about, the 60, the numbers, the R20, these are the text of the dimension itself, that the text, it should be aligned in one or two directions at maximum. So what does it mean? For example, if we do have here like 100, it is horizontal, 60, it is horizontal dimension. This 60 and this 60, they already vertical dimensions. And this one is already inclined, the phi 20 is already inclined, and this is with another direction. It is not preferred. It is preferred to have all the text aligned in one or two dimensions at maximum. Like for example, it is preferred if there is an option to make this R20, instead of written inclined, to be written over a horizontal direction, as I'm gonna show you when we play or change the settings of the dimensioning now. But anyway, generally speaking, and remember this point, that it is preferred to have the text to be aligned in one or two directions at maximum. Like for example, if I do have, it is not preferred, for example, to have a dimension like this one. So you're gonna have this one is already inclined here or aligned in this direction. You do have a vertical, you do have horizontal, you do have lots of directions of the dimensions, and it is too crowded in terms of so many dimensions here. So these things are not preferred in terms of the standard things. Another thing is that don't add over-defined dimensioning. So what does it mean, over-defined dimensioning? Like this case, this R20, it is the radius of this curve, right? And how about this R20? It is the radius of the same curve. So why you are adding two dimensions to the same object? Only one dimension is enough. So if you added multiple dimensions, more than one dimension to the same object or to the same feature, this is known as over-defined dimensioning. And this is not preferred. You are adding more dimension for no reason, and this is gonna make the drawing crowded with so many dimensions, which is basically, we don't need it. So try to minimize the number of the dimensions as much as you can. So what does it mean this? It means that try to minimize. This doesn't mean that you have to, you're gonna miss or don't or define the dimension for a specific feature. No, define all the features, all the objects within the drawing with the lowest number of dimensions as much as you can. So what does it mean? It means that any object, it should be defined, or any feature, it should be defined with only one dimension, and don't define over dimensioning. So what does it mean? Like this R20, it is over dimension. Why? I already have R20 here, so I have to remove one of them. So this R20 define the curve, the radius of this curve. Make sense? How about this phi 20? This defines the diameter of this circle. How about this phi 20, the diameter of this circle? But I can remove this one. This is also overdefined. Why? Because it is clear from the drawing that all of these circles, they are identical. So there is no need to add the dimension to each one. One is enough to represent all of them. Also, one of the things we can edit the text here by adding like phi 20. For example, if this circle represents a hole, so I can type like double click on the number, you can change the number itself or the text. Like 4 holes, I can type, for example, 4 holes phi 20. So what does it mean this? It means that I do have 4 holes with the same, which are identical, and each one with a diameter equals 20. So instead of adding phi 20 to this circle and phi 20 to this circle and phi 20 to this one, so it's gonna be so many diameters. So it means that we're gonna end up with so crowded dimensioning, and this is known as over dimensioning, which is, or over defined dimensioning, which is not acceptable, or it is not preferred according to the standard. So only one dimension to represent all of these circles is enough. Since this circle in the middle is of a different dimension, so it should be specified, or there is a dimension that should be defined for this circle separately. Also, how about this R20? I can remove this one, and it is preferred to remove this R20. Why? Because this R20 is already defined. So this curve is identical to this one, is identical to this one. So there is no need to define R20s for the 4 corners, because all of these curves or arcs, they already identical. So one is enough. Make sense? Also, as you can see, there is 60, which is this distance between the center to the center. It is already 60. Also, how about this 60? Also, this 60 represents the center between these 2 circles, which it should be the distance between the other 2 circles, right? So this is over dimensioning. One is enough. It means that this 60, there is no need for the other 60, and only one is enough. Like, for example, this 60 is needed. Why? Because the distance between this center and this center, it is not necessary to be the same distance between this center and this center. Because according to the drawing, I can see clearly that this line is already over the same line, horizontal line at this center. So only one dimension for this center and this one and this center and this center is enough. Like the distance between these 2 centers and the distance between these 2 centers, it is clear to me from the drawing that they are identical distances. So only one dimension to both of them. But it is not necessary in terms of engineering drawing that the distance between these 2 centers to be the same distance as these 2 vertical centers. So that's why I have to add another dimension here. This dimension is needed. If you remove this dimension, there is underdefined or undefined dimensioning. There is missing dimension here. Make sense? Also, I have here 100. There is no need to add another 100 between these 2 points, because it is clear. It is clear to me that the distance between this line and this line and these 2 lines are already vertical. So what does it mean? It means that the distance between these 2 points are identical to the distance between the other 2 points. So this 100 is not needed. One is enough. But there is a missing dimension here. What is the distance between this point and this point? It is not given, right? So I have to add it, because it is not necessary to be 100 as well. Then I'm gonna move this one, the extension lines, to be somehow away of the drawing, so it won't gonna be intersecting with the baselines of the drawing itself. For example, one would add the 100 on the other side. Why? Because you do have here, this is not acceptable, because you do have 60 on the left and 100, which should be also a vertical dimension, on the other side. It is not preferred. Collect all the vertical dimensions as much as you can on one side, and all the horizontal dimension as much as you can on one side, right? And it is preferred to have any horizontal dimension in one direction, and it should be blue the drawing as much as you can. But if it is crowded here, to add any other dimension, you can use the top, add dimensions on the top. So all of these are standard things. Try to acknowledge or understand these things. Like, for example, also the distance between this line I mean this line and this line, it should be defined, right? So as you can see, I'm gonna put this one on the right and I'm gonna let you know why. Then I'm gonna move this extension line here. Why I added this vertical dimension on the right, not on the left? If there is a space and there is a room that you add this 50 on the left, do it. But if you try to add the 50 on the left here, as you can see, you're gonna find that the dimension line of the 50, it intersects with the extension line of the 60, and this is not preferred. So that's why I have added this 50 on the right, on another separate side, in this way. And try to have the text in the middle. I can move the text, I can squeeze the text to move, shift it up or down. This is not preferred. It is preferred to have it in the middle of the dimension line. Make sense? So all of these are standard things in terms of dimensioning, and I've discussed with you how we can just add the dimensions. Now let us move to another thing regarding the dimensioning. In some cases, probably the text of the dimension, it won't gonna be clearly seen, or it should be scaled up or scaled down. In many of the cases it will be needed to be scaled up in comparison to the size of the drawing itself. Like in some cases, you probably won't gonna see the dimension. There is a dimension here, but it is not seen. Even the size of the arrow, it would be very small, very tiny. So it means that we have to know how we can play or change the settings or the size of the arrow, the size of the text of the dimension line, of the dimension itself. But you should acknowledge the different things of the, or the different components of a dimension line. The dimension, it would be including, this is the dimension line, which is the arrow itself. In addition, as we mentioned, we do have the extension. Here we do have two extensions. These are known as the extension lines, in addition to the text itself, in addition to the head of the arrow. This is the head of the arrow, and this head, it has a length in addition to the width here. And all of these are standard. AutoCAD automatically define these standard dimension, but we can override these standard things to end up with a dimension that is consistent with the drawing. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give you an example on the thing that I'm talking about here. How about if we have a line from this point and the length of this line, it is 1000. Remember that these dimensions here, the maximum dimension that I had here was 100 millimeter. How about if I do have 1000, right? If I try to draw a line, a vertical line with 1000 and try to zoom out so I could see the end, you can see the end of the line, no problem. But in some cases, probably the drawing sheet, if it is not, I mean the end of the line, if it is not seen, and like like the line, it is too long, that extend the default space of the drawing sheet in AutoCAD, you can type zoom all. Okay, so you're gonna see all the line. Like for example, in some cases, you probably gonna draw a line, the length of the line, let's say 10,000 millimeter. So the 10,000 millimeter, you won't gonna able to see the end of this line because it is too big, bigger than the specified default value of the size of the drawing sheet. So in this case, you have to type zoom all, then zoom space all and space. So you're gonna zoom everything. So you're gonna scale down or increase or decrease the size of the drawing sheet to be, so you can see all the object that already represented in the drawing. Like for example, if I remove the line, and as you can see, this object is too tiny, so you can simply type zoom space all and enter. So I already zoomed in, so I can see the drawing. Make sense? Anyway, so if we do have a line, let us assume that we do have a line from this point and the length of this line is 1000, and we do have another line that going to the left here with 1000, and we do have this inclined line, like this big triangular shape. And we decided for some reason to add, and we want to add the dimension. We said that this is the best icon to be used, which is this dimension. So I'm gonna add the dimension here between these 2 points for this line to be some specific value. So there is a dimension here, but it is not seen. It is too small. If you zoom in, you're gonna see that the length is 1000, but the text it is too small. Even I don't see the head of the arrow itself. The head of the arrow is too tiny. It is too small in size. The same thing, how about this dimension? The dimension here, it should be something, right? So as you can see, these dimensions are very tiny. They are not seen. So how we can scale up the dimension text, how we can scale up the size of the arrow head so we can see these details of the dimension. Because to print, even if we're gonna go to the printing, we won't gonna see this, the layout, so we can see the triangular shape. You won't gonna, in the printing, this dimension will not be seen at all. So how we can scale up or scale down or change the settings of the dimension, this is what we are going to discuss as I'm gonna show you now. So to change the dimension settings, in the annotation panel, you have to press over this arrow, this small one, and you're gonna find here the first icon. This is the text style, just to define the settings for the text style that should be shown, and we're gonna discuss this one. But here next to the ISO 25 or whatever that already there, this is the second icon. This is for the dimension style. Here we have to define the dimension style. And if you press on this one, you're gonna find this video, and in this video there are lots of patterns here. If you press on new, you're gonna set up or start a new settings. It means that you're gonna set up your own dimension style, and you can give it a name under your name even. But if, and set current, we're gonna discuss this one. Set current, for example, is just you're gonna choose from the list. But in this list, we'd have only two things, which are the standard in addition to the ISO. And if you would like to use this one as set current, it means that it means that you're gonna say, I'd like to use this dimension style. But this ISO 25 and the standard, these are the things that already by default already shown for AutoCAD as long as you open a CAD ISO file. This is the CAD ISO template from the start window. From the beginning, we started from here, right? If you remember, and we choose the this one, and we choose the template, which is a CAD ISO. According to the CAD ISO, by default, you're gonna find in this dimension here, the default thing is ISO 25 or the standard. But it is clear to me that the ISO 25, which is already represented here, this is the dimensions that already represented according to the ISO 25. The text size, in addition to the arrowhead size, it is not convenient or consistent with the drawing. So that's why I have to override this one or set up my own settings. So what we're gonna do, you're just gonna go to this icon again, and you're gonna start new settings, new dimension style. So you're gonna press on the new icon, and then you can give it a name. You can give it under your name. Like for example, I'm gonna put my name, and you're gonna just make it like override. You can override the ISO 25 or the standard. It's up to you. Just there is no need to do changes to the other items. Here, for example, you can specify a specific dimension type: linear, angular, radius, diameter, ordinary, layers, and tolerances. Just leave it all dimension. Your objective in the first window here, once you press new, is just to give it a name under your name, for example. Then you're gonna continue, and there is another window that is gonna be shown, which is this one. In this window, there are lots of tabs here. There are three main tabs basically that we're gonna use, which are the lines, the symbols and arrows and text. But there are some other tabs that would be used for other things like the tolerances, but we won't gonna cover through this course the tolerance things unless we have a time at the end of the class to discuss with you the fittings and the fit and the tolerance and how the tolerances and how we could add them and their importance in terms of mechanical application. But they are not in the content of this class or this course, basically. But anyway, in the lines tab, your objective is just to change the settings of the dimensions, the dimension line. We said that the dimension, it has three parts. One is the dimension line, in addition to two extension lines, in addition to the text itself. The text, it will be changed from the text. in this dimension that is already represented here in the drawing, we'd have lots of things. We'd have a problem with the dimension line. We would have a problem with the arrow size, right? So to change the arrow, this is these symbols and arrows, in addition to the text itself. So that's why these are the three tabs that we have to do changes for their parameters here to end up with a consistent dimension. For the lines, it's up to you. You can change the color of the line of the dimension into green, for example, or whatever. You can choose the color of the dimension line. So, and there is a preview here. The first box here, this first box, you already changing. These are the settings of the dimension line. The dimension line, which is this green line. But the extension line are the white line. These are the extension line, which is already related to this box. So this box down here, this is related to the extension lines, but this box on the top here is related to the settings of the dimension lines. For example, I'm gonna choose the dimension lines to be green, the extension lines as well to be green. It makes sense that all the extension lines and the dimension line, they do have the same color. If you would like to have a contrast in the color as well, in addition to the size of the dimension. For example, the line type, the dimension line by default, it should be continuous line, but you can change it into dash line or center line, but this is not practical. This is not engineering. This is not according to the engineering standard. For example, if you choose dash line, so you're gonna see that the dimension line will be seen as a dash line, but again, this is not practical. Or this is not according to the standard. According to the standard, the dimension line, it should be continuous line. But we can change the weight of the line. This is the line weight or the line thickness. I'm gonna make, for example, the thickness of the dimension line 0.3 millimeter. And another, so again, these three lists, basically, you can choose to change the color. You can choose to change the line weight, but don't change the line style or the line type. And it should be anyway continuous line. The same thing here for the line, for the extension lines, I'm gonna choose the same thickness. It means this, what makes sense, it means that the extension line and the dimension line, they should have the same color and the same thickness as well. So this is for the color and the thickness of the line, but in addition to this, there is baseline spacing, this number. What is the baseline spacing? As we said before, as I mentioned before, that there is a space between the extension line and the object. There should be space here. It means that the dimension, the extension line, it shouldn't be intersecting with the baseline, or it shouldn't be intersecting with the object itself. There should be a baseline spacing. This spacing is according to the standard at 3.75 millimeter. In case that we do have the maximum dimension in the drawing is about 100 or 120 millimeter. But here we do have the maximum dimension is 1000. So it should be scaled up. So what is the percent? This value, it is, I'm gonna give you some percent that you should consider, and it's gonna make sense. Or it's gonna help you to specify this number. So the 3.75, it is somehow acceptable as long as the baseline of the dimension is 100 millimeter. But we do have here 1000 millimeter. So the 3.75 millimeter, it is too small. As you can see in the figure here, I don't see any gap. So it is advised to have this percent as, like we're gonna consider a reference number, which is 5% of the maximum dimension of the drawing. The maximum dimension of the triangular shape here, it is 1000, and I mean the maximum height or the maximum width, like height and width, it is 1000. So 1000 times 5%, this is gonna give a 50 millimeter. Then this number is gonna be 3/4 or 75% of this 50 millimeter. So what you're gonna do? Or in other words, what I'm gonna do, assume that you already given this drawing and you do have the 1000 as the maximum height or the maximum width. For example, if the height is 2000 and the width is 1000, just pick the you know, like the average between these two dimensions, or even you can work on the smallest dimension or the smaller of them, which is the 1000. So we do have 1000 as a height, 1000 as a width. Then I'm gonna calculate let's say about 55% of this dimension. So 5% of 1000 gives 50 millimeter. Then record this value, this 50. This 50 is going to be your reference. So all of these dimensions, all of these values, the 3.75, the 125, and the 0.625, this number should be scaled up or scaled down depending on this 50. This value, which is 5% of the maximum dimension in the drawing. Very simple. This is just, I'm giving you an approach, but you can do it. This is not a standard. What I'm saying here, it is not a standard. What I'd like to do is to end up with consistent dimension, that the size of the text, the size of the arrow should be consistent with the drawing. But the problem is, by default, according to the default value that's already set up in AutoCAD, this text and arrow size, they are not seen as already represented here in the drawing, right? So that's why I'm doing it changes, scaling up or scaling down these dimensions to be consistent with the drawing. So I need to scale it up. So how much I have to increase this number, to how much I have to increase this one and this one, I don't know. So what I'm gonna give you, there is no specific thing or a specific standard, but I'm gonna give you like a guide here. This guide, your objective is just to calculate 5% of the maximum dimension. The maximum dimension in this drawing, it is 1000. So 5% of 1000 gives 50 millimeter. So 50 millimeter, just record this value. Save this value. This is your reference. Then the baseline is spacing, it should be 75% of this value that you just calculated, which is 50. So 75% of 50 gives 37.5. So I'm gonna make the baseline 75% of the 50 millimeter. What is the 50 millimeter again? It is the 5% of the maximum dimension in the drawing. Make sense? How about this extended line beyond the dimension line? This is the dimension line. As you can see here, there is a very small dash beyond the dimension line, right? This value, how much it is? By default, it is 1.25 millimeter. So as you can see, there is nothing almost beyond the dimension line. But I need something. The extension line, it should go beyond the dimension line with a small distance here. This distance, according to the standard, it should be quarter the 50 that you calculated. That's your reference point. So my reference number is 50, and this value should be the quarter, 25% of 50. So 25% times 50, this gives us 12.5. Make sense? Then how about the offset from the origin? So as you can see in the preview, the extension line has been increased, right? It won't gonna be that long in the drawing, but it will be clearly seen. It will be perfect with the drawing, as I'm gonna show you. But don't get so much with the preview here. So, but the preview is gonna give us indication that, for example, if I reset this value back, as you can see, observe this distance. It's gonna be decreased, right? But I needed 12.5, so it's gonna be clearly seen, because according to the 1.25, it is not seen in the drawing, but now it will be clearly seen there. Offset from the origin, it means that offset from the origin here, I'm talking about this offset distance, which is this space also from the baseline, which is very, very similar to this distance. But according to the standard, this one, it should be 1/8 of the reference number. The reference number is 50, so this should be 1/8 times 50. This is gonna give us at the end 6.25. So if you did these changes, you're gonna end up with dimensions. These dimensions will be clearly seen, and it will be consistent in this drawing, right? So this is for the lines. This is what I've did for the line. So what I've did here, I changed the color. If you wish to change the color, but make sure that you have the dimension line, the color of the dimension line, the color of the extension line, both, they do have the same color. Also, I changed the line width for both of them. Also, I changed the baseline spacing as 75% of a reference number. This reference number, you can choose it as 5% of the maximum dimension in the drawing. or the 5% of the average between the maximum and the minimum dimension in the drawing in case that the contrast between them is that big. Also, this number, it should be the 25% of this reference number. This one, it should be 1/8 of this of the reference number. Make sense? Then this is for the dimension line and the extension line. How about then you're gonna move to the arrow. So here we changes. Here we are in this tab we are doing changes to the dimension line and the extension line, and that's it. But how about the arrow size? The arrow size, it should be increased. The arrow size here, it should be 50% of your reference number. So my reference number is 50. Now the arrow size is 2.5 millimeter. It is too small. That's why it is not seen here. So 2.5, it is too small. I have to increase it. So my reference number, it is 50. So 52 it is 50% of 50 gives 25 millimeter. So I'm gonna take it 50% of the reference number, which is 25 millimeter. This is for the arrow size. Also, we're gonna increase the mark size in case that we are using mark center, for example. I'm gonna increase any number, try to increase it to the reference. All of this number kind of reference it to the 5. So now my reference number is 50. So it means that I have to scale it up 10 times. So this 2.5, which it should be 50% of the 50, so it's gonna be 50. It's gonna be 25. Also, the break size. The break size is this is the break size. When it's shown here in the preview, I'm gonna show you what does it mean the break size. But as you can see, this should be 75% of the reference value, which is 50. So 75% times 50. This gives us 37.5. Make sense? Leave the angle, this angle as it is. Even this factor, no need to change it. Okay, so this is for the arrow dimension. Now with these new dimensions, with these new numbers, the arrow will be clearly seen. It's getting bigger in the preview here, right? But as you can see in the preview, the arrow size is too much to the drawing, right? It means that according to these dimensions are not consistent. Why? Because this is according to the standard. But I do have the object that I already presenting its dimension. It is scaled up. It is too huge in terms of the dimensions. This is for the arrow size. Now we're gonna move to the text. Only one thing that we're gonna do for the text, which is this, two things basically. This number, which is the text height. Text height, it means that the size of the letter, the size of the number itself. As you can see, the 1000 is too small. It is not seen. I need to scale it up. 2.5 is too small. So it should be 50% of the dimension that you choose. 50% of the reference value. The reference value is 50. So I'm going to take it 25%. 25 millimeter. Then the offset from the dimension line. Offset from the dimension line, like the distance between the number and the dimension line, according to the standard, should be 1/8 of the reference. So as you can see, the preview, it has been scaled up depending on the text. So now it makes sense. Everything is clear. The text is clearly seen. The spacing between the base, the extension line, and the object, even the size of the arrow became very clear, right? So this number, it should be 1/8 of your reference value, which is 50. So 1/8 over 50, 1/8 times 50. This gives us the 6.25. Make sense? How about these things? I'm just gonna try to do changes, especially to this. Check this button. This is by default. Just observe this R, the radius here. The radius, as you can see, the radius R is already aligned with the dimension line. Aligned with the dimension line. It means that the text, here we are talking about the text alignment, right? The text alignment here is already aligned with the dimension line for this R. Here the text is already aligned with the dimension line. Here the dimension line is horizontal, so that's why the text is horizontal. Here the dimension line is inclined, so that's why the dimension is already inclined with it. But how about it if you would like to keep all the dimensions or numbers to be represented horizontal? And this is preferred in many of the cases. As I mentioned, it is preferred to have the text of the dimension to be aligned in one direction or two directions at maximum. So what does it mean? That is fine to have the text to be aligned with the vertical dimension or the horizontal dimension to be aligned with the horizontal dimension. The same thing for this one. But having lots of directions of the text, it is not preferred. 2 or 3 at maximum is acceptable. So the best, according to the ISO standard, this is the ISO standard, that we align the vertical dimension, the text of the vertical dimension with the its dimension line. The horizontal dimension also, that its text is aligned with the dimension line. Inclined surfaces or inclined dimensions, aligned dimensions, their text is aligned with the dimension line, but for the radius, it is aligned horizontal. So if you just observe the difference between ISO standard and this one, the only difference is this R. This is not preferred. This is not according to the ISO standard. So make sure that you check this box, this one, ISO standard, to have the radius to be aligned horizontal and other dimensions will be aligned with the dimension line. This is according to the ISO standard. So these are the 3 changes that we have to do to the dimension. So now we set up all the settings that we discussed here in terms of the sizes, the size of the line, the color of the line, the spacing between the baseline and the extension line, and the object in addition to the symbol and the size of the arrow in addition to the text size. So now with these settings, the dimensions should be clearly seen. If you would like to increase it up, you can increase your reference number. So you should have a reference number. The reference number that I chose was 5% of the maximum dimension. If you feel for some reason that this reference number is giving us inconsistent dimensions to the drawing or to the shape, you can increase it up or you can increase it down. But keep in mind that you should have a reference number, right? So based on my use to this software, 5% of one of like the average dimension of the drawing is very acceptable to give a consistent size of the dimensioning, and this is what we're gonna use. So I have set up all the settings. I'm gonna press OK. As you can see, I have specifying for these settings because you're gonna do this dimension styles. This changes to the dimension style, and it is advised to start from here, new, and give it a name under your name. Then you can save this one and recall it at any other time. There is no need to do these settings all the time. So now I've saved this one. Now you can close. Then if you're gonna go back again to this list, you're gonna find here, make sure that this is the settings under your name already shown here. Select this one. Once you add any dimension, so like this dimension, I'd like to change it to the new dimension style. So select the dimensions, then you're gonna go to the dimension style that you already set up here and change it. So as you can see, the color became green. The text is still white, so it should be the same color. So what I'm gonna do, it means that I have to change the color of the text, as I'm gonna show you, to be the same color as the dimensions, the dimension lines and the extension line. Also, as you can see, the spacing between the extension line and the object, it makes sense. The spacing between, let me remove this weight. The spacing between the text and the dimension, it makes sense. The size of the arrow is clearly seen. So now the dimensions are making sense. Okay. So how can I change the color text, the text of the color of the text? If you're gonna go back again to this icon and make sure that you choose your setting, you can modify. Now you're gonna start new. Don't start new, because if you start new, you're gonna start new settings. No. I would like to modify over something that I did before. So modify, choose your name and modify. Now you're gonna go to the text and change the text color. This is text color here to be green. If you change the fill color, it means that it will be with fill, like like it have a background of red or whatever, but this is not preferred in terms of engineering drawing. So make sure that you have this one as none, but you can change the color of the text to be the same color as the dimension, then press OK. So I've modified over this one. Now, if it will be automatically upgraded. If you try to add any other dimension, like the angle between these two lines will be according to the new standard that you already specified. So adding any object and adding the dimension to this object will be automatically updated. As you can see, do you see the dimension of the radius or the diameter? It became horizontal. There it was inclined. Do you see this one? If you would like even to change these dimensions, do you see these dimensions? I'm gonna change them according to the new standard or to the new style that I specified here, which is under my name. But as you can see, the dimension sizes and the arrow size, it is too much in comparison to the size of the drawing. Why? Because the maximum dimension of this drawing is 100. And these things were specified according to the 50, which is 5% of the 1000 as a reference number. So it means that for this drawing, for this small drawing, you need to set up new dimension style according to the new reference number. Make sense? So this is how we can change the dimension setting, how we can add the dimensions in general to any engineering drawing using AutoCAD. So the last part of this lecture is layers. How we can use layers and what does it mean layers in AutoCAD and what is the importance of this tool. In fact, this tool is more helpful for civil engineers. As we agreed before, AutoCAD is mainly made for civil engineer, or is very useful for civil engineer more than even mechanical engineer. We do have other software that more consistent with the mechanical applications. But we can use AutoCAD also for mechanical engineering things, and even the producer of the AutoCAD, the Autodesk company, they try to add some features related to the mechanical engineering, but still AutoCAD is commonly used for civil engineers. But the key idea of layers in AutoCAD is to give us the capability to represent different features over different layers. Then we can manage these layers by turning off or on one of the layers. We can see some features and hide some other features, or see all of them at once. This is the basic idea of layers. Like for example, if we consider this simple drawing, and as you can see, we have lots of features. Assume for example like this, these circles represent one feature or a specific thing in this drawing. And assume that this circle in the middle, in addition to this dashed line, represents something else, another feature of the same object or the same construction or the same part. In addition to the boundary, this curve with this line, with this curve, with this line. So assume that they're already representing a third feature. So assume that we have here in the drawing 3 main features. And for some reason, we are interested to represent these features over different layers. As I'm gonna show you what does it mean layer. Layers, we're gonna need it, especially in case that we have so many features. And these features, they already interacting together or intersecting with each other. So it's gonna be very hard for us to distinguish one feature from the other one. Here, this shape is simple. We have 3 different features. The dashed line that I have represent or distinguish between these different features using the line and the colors. Like I do have these 2 circles, the circle and the line represent something, the boundary represents something else in addition to the circles, in addition to the dimensions themselves, right? So you could consider that we do have in total 4 features, 4 different things. But how about if we have 20 or 50 or 100 different things, and all of them, they should be shown here into this small area. So it's going to be very hard for us to understand or distinguish between these different features, even if we use different colors. So the best way to represent or distinguish or represent these different features is using layers. So for example, what I'm going to do right now, I'm gonna represent the dimensions over a layer that is separate than the other drawing. So layers, how we can manage layer, you're gonna find this long panel for the layers. Layers, there are lots of icons here, which basically all of them are related somehow. The key eye that you use, this is a list that basically right now would have two only layers that we can use, which are these are the default layer, especially the first one. The first one, layer 0, we cannot remove this layer at all. This is the first layer that we're already using. Assume that layer, this is like a drawing sheet, a sheet paper. Like you're gonna represent one feature over a sheet paper, but this sheet paper is very transparent. And we do have another sheet paper which is very transparent. When you add these two sheets over each other, you're gonna see everything in both layers. It means that you're gonna represent some features over this transparent sheet, and you're gonna represent some other feature over another transparent sheet. When you add both of them together, you're gonna see all the shape, all of the shape together. This is typically the same concept of layers. If you press this icon, this is the manage, to manage the properties or manage the different layers that we're gonna use. As I said, by default, we do have two layers, but we can add more layers. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna add a new layer for the dimensions. I'm interested to represent these dimensions in a separate layer. So to add a new layer, this is the icon. You're gonna find here new layer. The next one is just to add new frozen layer, and we're gonna talk about the frozen layer. Here to delete a layer that's already there. Here to set as current, and we're gonna discuss what does it mean set as current. So these are the four icons here, and they are very important. You basically start from here by starting new layer. So if you press on the new layer, you're gonna see that a layer is already shown and the default name is layer 1. If you press more, you're gonna find layer 2, layer 3, and so on. You can give a name to the layer, just double click on the name and you can give it a name under your name, for example. Or for example, I'm gonna name a layer by dimensions, because I'm interested to represent the dimension into a separate layer. And let us assume that we have another layer for feature 1, and then I'm gonna add another layer for feature 2, and so on. So you can add layer any number of layer as much as you can. It's up to you. Make sense? Now, as you can see, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. Can we delete any one of these layers? Yes. For example, I can delete feature 2. Select the layer and press on this icon, will be deleted. But if you try to delete a layer that you're already working in, that you're already using, it won't gonna be deleted, like 0. And anyway, layer 0 and diff points, these two layers cannot be deleted. These are the default things in AutoCAD and they cannot be deleted. But you can add or delete anything that you just added as a layer. Make sense? Also, another thing that you should understand here, we're gonna discuss the frozen and the set current. But now what I want to do is to move the dimensions into these dimensions into the dimension layer. Move the dimensions into the dimension layer. And let us add here a new layer like feature 2. So how you can assign something that you created to another layer, to a specific layer, what you're gonna do, I'm just gonna select these dimensions. I'm gonna select these dimensions, and then I'm going to assign these dimensions to the new layer that I just named as dimensions. So I choose all the dimensions because I'm interested to represent these dimensions into a separate layer. As you can see, once you choose anything, any object, dimension or line or circle, whatever it is, we choose just the dimension. I just selected all the dimensions. As you can see, by default, these dimensions has been assigned to the 0 layer. This is the default layer. Now, no, I said I'm interested to represent this dimension into another layer, which is dimensions. So your objective is just to move or select the new layer that you would like to assign these features to, like dimensions. Now these dimensions had been assigned to the new layer, which is dimensions. Make sense? So for example, if you're gonna go back again to this window, to manage things. Even you can change. For example, I'm giving the layers, I'm giving all the dimensions green color, right? So I can assign, for example, a specific color to the layer. Like, for example, I can give it a color as green to be consistent or matching the color of the feature that already represented in this layer. So once you see the green color, it means that you are already talking about the dimensions. Make sense? So it means that you can distinguish between one layer to the other one with the name or a color. You can assign a color. And let us assume, for example, feature 1, I'm going to represent any object within the drawing with a red color. I'm going to assign this one or move this feature into the feature 1. Then I'm going to keep this one or I'm going to give this one blue to move any feature with a blue color to the feature 2. Then I'm going to add here feature number 3, and I'm going to give it a color like white. Okay, so any white thing will be assigned to feature 3 as a layer 3. And you can add more layer, it's up to you. But here, as you can see, we do have like red things. So this is one feature, blue, another feature, second, third, 4 features. So that's why we do have here 4 new layers. Now I assign the dimensions to the dimension layer. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to assign these red things to the feature 1, and I'm gonna assign this. Then I'm gonna select these 2 blue objects to assign them to feature 2, and I'm gonna assign any white thing to feature here to feature 3. Okay, just select all of these lines. I'm just clicking over them without any control key or shift or whatever. Just click over them so they will be automatically assigned. So as you can see, I have assigned all of these different features to different layers. So what does it mean? There shouldn't be any feature that is represented in the layer 0. I have moved all of these into dimension, feature 1, feature 2, and feature 3, right? If we're gonna go back here, you're gonna see these symbols. This lamp, and it is switched on or lightening. It means that this layer is activated. It is showing. It is already showing. But if you would like to hide a specific layer, you can press on this one. It will be hidden. Okay. Forget about this message, and I'm gonna explain it. For example, how about if I'd like to hide the dimensions? If you just pressed on this one, it will be hidden. So the dimensions will be, or the dimension layer has been removed, or the dimension have been removed, but it is not physically removed, but they already just hidden. If you would like to show it up again, just press on this lamp, it will be shown. The same thing, if you would like to hide feature 1, it will be hidden, then it will be shown, hidden and shown, and so on. So this is the importance of the layers, to represent or specify any specific feature to a specific layer. Then you can hide and work on other layer. Then you can edit, then you can show this layer or show the other layer, all of them together. Like, as I said, this is very useful in case that we do have so many layers, so many features, and it is hard to work and generate or edit over these different features as long as all of them already represented over the same layer. It is advised to work over separate layers. Make sense? As I said, I can hide something and show something. How about if I'd like to add? So I've created this layer, and for some reason I forgot, or I have to edit or add more feature. Let's say like I'm gonna draw another circle here, and this circle, it should be added to the blue feature. These 2 circles, they should be added, included in feature number 2, right? So once you include them into feature number 2, they're gonna take the color automatically because they belong to the same feature. They belong to the same layer. Now they has been assigned to layer number 2. Make sense? Also, there is another icon here, which is this mark. This one, it means that set current. Set current, what does it mean? For example, to draw this circle, I've drawn these circles in the beginning. I draw these two circles. By default, these two circles had been assigned to the layer 0. Why layer 0? Because layer 0 is the set current one, is the activated one. So any new drawing that you're gonna add will be added automatically to layer 0. Make sense? But if you need this one to be moved to another layer, you have to select the things that you draw and you have to move them to other layer. But can I automatically, anything that I'm gonna draw, how, for example, so as I said, when you draw these two circles, by default they has been assigned to the layer 0, but I don't want them to layer 0. I need them to be represented over feature 2, this another layer. So you have two options, either to draw over layer 0, then you're gonna assign, select the objects and move them to the other layer, which is layer feature 2. But this is gonna be through two steps, that you draw, then select the objects, then you have to move them to another layer. So this would take time, especially in case that you're gonna generate lots of drawings. But before you draw these circles, these two circles can be automatically assigned to the new feature, to the new layer, which is feature 2, as long as you set this one as current. So if I set this one, feature 2, as current, how? Select the layer and click on this icon, set as current. So as you can see, this mark, this check has been moved to feature 2. Now, any feature, any drawing, anything that you're gonna draw will be automatically assigned to layer feature 2. That's why by default, these two circles had been taken a color as blue. Why? Because by default, I'm using by layer. So what does it mean by layer? It means that any drawing that you're gonna draw will take the color of the layer that you specified. I specified blue color for this layer. So any object that you're gonna draw will take the color of this layer. For example, how about if I'd like to add more features or more drawing to feature number 3, to layer feature number 3. So I'm gonna set current feature number 3, then I'm gonna draw some shapes here. And by default, is gonna take the color of feature 3, which is already white. How about if you would like to add dimensions to these things? So you're gonna move, you can directly move to the layer. I mean, like in this case, you have to set dimensions as current, then you're gonna start adding the dimensions to this circle, for example, the diameter, whatever it is, and the other circle in this way, for example. So this is basically how we can work over layers, and you can hide. I can hide this one. If you try to hide any layer that already set as a current, which has this mark, you're gonna see this message. This text box tells us that the current layer will be turned off. What do you want to do? Are you sure that you would like to turn off the layer that you're already using, that you already set as a current? Yes or no? If you would like to turn it off, you're gonna turn it off. If you keep the current layer on, you can keep the color layer on. So just check. This is only in case that you try to switch off a layer that is already currently used or set as a current, already set it as a current. Make sense? So this is the key idea. So let us set this 0 as a current, then you can hide any layer and you can show the layer no matter what. Frozen or freezing a layer, it means that you have done editing to this layer and you are not allowed to add to this layer. I mean, like at the moment. So just freeze the layer. It is kind of like hiding the layer, but this won't gonna affect any feature to the layer itself or the dimension that you just added. But if you lock the layer, locking the layer, it means that this layer has been blocked. Blocked, it means if you try to do any editing, as you can see, it is locked. There is no possible editing to this layer. or these dimensions. Any feature that you added to this layer will not be edited anymore unless you unlock this one. I can unlock it and then I can move this dimension or do editing to this dimension, no problem. Okay, so this is basically this how we can work over layers, and this is the last part of today's video or today's lecture. It's just the objective was to show you three things: how we can do changes into the properties of some objects like lines, how we can do changes to the line type, line color, in addition to the line thickness, how we can add the dimensions, how we can change the dimension style, how we can set up our own dimension style by adding our name to the dimension style itself. Also, we discussed the layers, how we can work and set up layers, and how we can assign different features in the drawing to the two different layers. Make sense? So this is the objective, and this is the end of today's video. And the next meeting, we're gonna consider more practice on this on AutoCAD 2-dimension sketching. Thank you, and see you in the next video.